How is your week going? I hope you're doing well. I've got some fun things to talk about today. I was sitting there thinking, so I'm working on creating a course for HR for companies. And I was thinking about the concept of really taking responsibility and ownership of your own stuff. Now, it doesn't just apply to things in your business. Mostly, though, the place that we slough off ownership is in ourselves and in our personal life. So, what does it mean when I talk about taking responsibility or stepping up? And I think I'm going to call taking responsibility. That's like really stepping up and saying, "Okay, I own this. I'm the one that has to deal with it. This is my thing." And when we don't take responsibility, we're basically just trying to shuck it off on somebody else or on something external to us. It's their fault. They did this, right? And over the years, I've found that it's a lot more useful to take the responsibility instead of shucking it off. Because if I shuck it off and I'm just blaming somebody else, then I have no real way to grow from it and I can't change it, right? But when I say, you know what, hey, this was me, okay? I invested in that thing. I didn't learn enough about it before I did it. So even if they maybe did a bunch of wrong things, right? I can still take responsibility for that as well and saying, okay, well, what do I do next time? Because I did this, okay? Or I brought this into my life somehow. What can I learn from it? Hey, Lou. So if so talk to me now and tell me, what are some things that you could see in your life that you might take responsibility for that you had thought, well, this is really that person's problem, right? So another thing is like in relationships, oftentimes like, well, that person is the one doing this and they did that and they're being controlling and they're doing this to me and they're doing that to me, right? Instead of saying, wow, okay, huh, how did I bring this into my life? What is it that my soul is trying to teach me because I attracted this person that is controlling, right? Or that has these things that we have a real struggle with each other with. If I attracted that person, if I brought them into my life, then I did it so that they could teach me something. I did it so that I could learn, so that I could grow. Because we often attract people who have similar issues to us. So they become a mirror to us of what we are doing in our own life. Hey, Sativa. So that's an example of taking responsibility. Instead of just saying, boy, that person's a real jerk, or why do I always, attract people like this, or whatever that might be, that's kind of the getting down on yourself bit. And that's also the blaming. So we're not talking about that. And there's another way in which you don't want to take responsibility for something in a negative way where you're beating yourself up for it, right? We're not talking about that, but we're talking about taking responsibility in a positive way of, well, what am I going to learn from this? And hey, Samantha, the motivator. I like that. We're taking responsibility in a positive way, not in beating up on ourselves, but in saying, hey, what is it that I need to learn from this situation? Why did I bring this situation into my life, right? And that's a totally different way to take responsibility. And it's really helpful in the sense that when we're in that place, we're in a place of empowerment. Instead of just feeling like the world is doing everything to us and other people are just doing everything to us, we can instead stand in our power. That's why I call it stepping up and say, hey, how did I bring this into my life? What am I attracting and why? What am I trying to learn from it? And what can I learn from it so that I do better next time? Or what do I need to shift or heal in myself so that I don't do that, or I don't attract that? Or what kind of spiritual or mental muscles am I trying to exercise to be able to stand strong in my power, right? So there's all kinds of lessons that we learn from this. Hey, Life of Eddie, how are you? Click a heart and say hi to me. I'd love to see you. So what do we learn from this, right? From each thing is so dependent on how we step into it, on if we take responsibility or not. That is 100% dependent on our response to it. If we just say, well, that person did something bad to me, this teaches me that just more people are bad in the world and I shouldn't trust people, right? Then that's not a very empowering or really helpful thing. It's not going to help us move forward in our lives. It's not going to help us get to where we want to be and achieve our goals, right? It's just a negative thing that we say we learned from it. But if we say, hey, I learned that I need to do this kind of research. I need to screen people for these type of qualities. I learned I need to go and maybe do some more healing work on myself so that I'm not in that space where I'm attracting these kinds of people, right? Then we've taken a very empowering stance about whatever seemingly negative thing has happened in our life. We've just taken an empowering stance. We've given ourselves something that we can go and do with it, and it will 100% make us better, right? Because when we focus on empowering ourselves and on learning something from the situation, we are going to be better off no matter what, right? Than we will if we are just living in a place of blame and saying, I mean, if you put the two choices in front of you and you say, hey, in which one am I going to be better off? If I am living in a place of blame and I'm saying this was that person's fault, they did it, people can't be trusted, right? Or if I'm saying, okay, I brought this into my life somehow. What did I do that contributed to this? What can I learn from this? What can I change so that I do something different in the future? That is a totally different, much more empowering thing to do. People don't like to do it because they don't want to take the blame or the responsibility themselves. And to say, it's much easier to say, they didn't do what they should have done. They should have told me this. Their product didn't work, or whatever it is, right? Rather than saying, I didn't do something. What can I do to learn, right? And it's not in a negative way. This is what I want to say. Oftentimes, it's not in the discouraged, let's beat myself up. I'm such an idiot. How could I have been taken for a fool like that? That kind of self beating up. This is not the empowering, taking responsibility, stepping up I'm talking about, right? That's when you're just being like, that's when you're living in the victim. That's actually totally different. It can sound similar to some people. They think, well, I'm taking responsibility. It was all my fault. And I'm such a loser and I'm so sad and I'm to blame. And right. No, that's not taking responsibility. That's living in the victim, right? Taking responsibility is saying, okay, I brought this somehow. Now, how do I change it? How do I make it different? How do I make it better? What do I learn from this? It's always in a positive way forward, right? So it is taking responsibility. It is accepting that I played a part in the situation, whether it's the breakup of a relationship or, a business failure or an investment failure or whatever it is, accepting the role you played and then saying, what do I learn from it? How do I move forward? That is very different from being in the blame game, whether you're just living in the blame shame game on yourself or whether you're doing it to somebody else, right? That's victim aggressor mode versus I'm standing up as an adult, taking responsibility for what I can take responsibility for. You're not taking responsibility for everything, right? Obviously, that other person still did do some wrong actions, but I'm taking responsibility for everything, the maximum that I possibly can take responsibility for, because that's where I can find the gems of learning and growth so that I can do better next time. See? That's the beauty of that type of stepping up into your power and into taking responsibility, rather than either living in the blame shame game on yourself, which is completely disempowering, or pushing it onto somebody else, which is also disempowering, right? So that's the difference between stepping up and shucking it off, basically. And so I hope that little distinction was helpful for you today. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I will see you tomorrow, and we'll see what comes up next.